Awesome. Okay, so today's lesson is going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about squares, L7s, right? Squares and square roots. Okay, so we're going to talk about what's going on here. We kind of touched on this a little bit yesterday. You know, whenever we're talking about squares, I mean, what's a square, right? Square is like the most basic shape we learn in kindergarten.
Circles.
No. Well, I guess circles are a little bit more basic than squares. But squares are pretty basic. So what we have here is we have a four-sided figure with equal sides. And you see, this is how we say things are equal, is we have those little lines. We're saying that these are all equal sides. Equal sides. And so, to find the area of a square, find the area, we say that the area of any four-sided figure is going to be length times width. Okay? In this case, the length is the width. They're the same thing. Right? The length is the same as the width. They are equivalent. So if they're the same gosh darn thing, I'm just going to say side squared. Right? Because it's the side times the side. We call those squares. Okay? Something that we need to get better at, and something that I want you guys to do, is we need to build a little chart of what our common squares are. Okay? Our common squares. So 1 squared is 1 times 1 is 1. 2 squared is 2 times 2 is 4. 3 squared is 9. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13? No one knows 13! Oh my gosh! 169? I don't even know if that's true. 190. Oh my gosh, no one knows 14. 196. Let's do 15. 15 squared, 225. I'm going to do 16 squared, 256. All right. Right around there is what you're kind of expected to just know. Okay? Right around here are the things that you should simply know of what our squares are. Right? These are our squares. Now, here's where it gets interesting. So now, if we kind of have a handle on how to square, we also need to know how to square root. Okay? And that's what this symbol is. That is the square root symbol. Have you guys seen this symbol before? Have you guys used this symbol before?
Yes, I have.
Little bit on the calculator, right? The square root is important too, because if you look at your pre-assessment, one of the problems I gave you was there is a square with the area of 144 inches squared. So if there is a square, okay, we have this square, and I know that the area, so the area inside of it, A equals 144 inches squared. And I believe the question was, what is the perimeter? Okay, I was asking what the perimeter was. So if the area is 144 inches squared, we need to find the length of one of the sides. And we're going to do that by square rooting 144. And sure enough, we know that to be 12. So if one of these sides is 12, right? If we know that this is 12, we know all the sides are 12 because it's a square. And thus the perimeter is going to be 4 times 12, or 48. So that's how we would do that problem. But we have to work backwards. Knowing from the area, we can figure out the length of the side and then the perimeter. Okay? This was a problem that a lot of us started but didn't exactly get the right answer on. We kind of lost it somewhere in here. Now, one of the things that I want us to be able to do is to estimate square roots. Okay? This wasn't on the pre-assessment, this isn't on the homework, but this is a really important skill to have as we move forward in algebra. Okay, we want to be able to estimate square roots, right? Because look at our chart here. We have all of these numbers. And so we know that the square root of 4 is going to equal 2, and we know that the square root of 9 is going to equal 3, but what about the square root of 6? Right? The square 6 isn't on here, so it's not a perfect square. It doesn't directly root into a single number. There's no whole number times a whole number that equals 6. But when we square root 6, what we can do is we can estimate what it's going to be. Because I know 6 is between 4 and 9. 6 is between 4 and 9, right? So I know the square root is going to be between 2 and 3. So if I said the square root of 6, and you should be able to see that the square root of 6 is going to be somewhere between 2 and 3. 2.5, 2.4 something, right? We should be able to do that. And sure enough, if I do 6 and I take the square root, I see that it's 2.449, yada, 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 yada. So we should have been able to estimate that correctly. So like, for example, if I were to do another number, if I were to say, what's the square root of 50? Okay. What do we think the square root of 50 is going to be? Square root of 50. What numbers is it going to be between?
4 and 5.
Square root of 50? No, not between 4 and 5. It's right here, right? It's 49 is on the low end, 64 is on the high end. We know it's going to be between 7 and 8. Now, is it going to be closer to 7 or closer to 8?
7.
Closer to 7, right? 50 is just barely above 49. So a reasonable estimate would be what? 7.1. Absolutely, I think that's reasonable. 7.1, maybe? And so let's find out. If I do 50, and I do square root, 7.07, right? Which, if we were to round up, would be 7.1. So we want to get in the habit of being comfortable enough with square roots to be able to start estimating where they are at. And that, as they say, is going to